I need to warn you about something you are almost certainly doing every single week that is quietly destroying your ability to build wealth. And I promise you, when I tell you what day I am talking about, you are going to think back to last week, and you are going to feel it in your chest, because you did it. I know you did. Almost everyone does. My name is Rabbi Eliyahu, and for over 40 years I have studied the ancient laws of the Torah, the Talmud, and the hidden teachings of the Kabbalah. I have sat with wealthy Jewish families across 3 continents. I have watched how they handle money, how they protect it, how they grow it across generations. And there is one practice, one specific law, that appears in almost every single one of those families, without exception. They never, and I mean never, open their bills, review their debts, or make financial decisions on this one specific day of the week. Not because they are avoiding their problems, not because they are irresponsible, but because the Talmud, in Tractate Shabbat, establishes something that most people in the modern world have completely forgotten. There is a day, encoded in ancient Jewish law, that is spiritually incompatible with financial anxiety. And when you open your bills on that day, when you sit with your debt on that day, when you make money decisions from a place of fear and stress on that day, you are not just making a poor financial choice. According to the hidden teachings of the Kabbalah, you are actively breaking a spiritual circuit, one that determines whether wealth flows toward you or away from you all week long. Stay with me until the end of this video, because I am going to reveal not just which day this is, but the exact replacement practice that Jewish families use instead. A practice so simple and so precise that you can begin it this week. And when you do, the relationship between you and your money will never be the same again. Let me tell you about the moment I first understood this. I was 26 years old, sitting in the kitchen of my mentor, Rabbi Mordecai Feigenbaum, of blessed memory. He was in his late 70s at the time, and had spent decades studying Talmudic financial law in the great yeshivas of Jerusalem. His family had built and preserved significant wealth across 5 generations, through wars, through the Holocaust, through economic collapses that destroyed the finances of entire communities around them. I had come to him that Saturday afternoon with a stack of papers in my hands, bills, credit notices, a letter from the bank. I was young and I was stressed, and I needed to figure out what I owed and what I could pay. Rabbi Feigenbaum looked at those papers in my hands, and his expression changed. Not with anger, with something deeper, with concern. He said to me very quietly, "Eliyahu, put those away, not today." I said, "Rabbi, I need to deal with these. I am behind." He shook his head slowly and said, "I know you are behind. That is exactly why you must not look at them today." And then he said something I have never forgotten in all the years since. He said, "The day you review your debts is the day that defines your entire week's relationship with money. If you do it from a place of fear, in a moment that the Torah itself declared sacred from worldly worry, you seal that fear into every financial decision you make for the next 7 days. Put them away. We will look at them tomorrow night after Havdalah, when the week begins again with clarity." I did not fully understand that night, but I listened and I put the papers away. And something strange happened. By the time Monday morning came, the anxiety that had been crushing my chest on that Saturday afternoon was gone. I looked at the same papers with completely different eyes. I made a plan. I made calls. Within 2 weeks, I had restructured my situation entirely. That was the first time I understood that the Torah's financial laws are not just religious obligations. They are a sophisticated system of wealth psychology, encoded 3,000 years ago by sages who understood something that modern financial advisors have completely forgotten. Let me explain what is actually happening, from both the ancient wisdom and from what we now understand about the human mind. The day I am talking about is Shabbat, Saturday, from Friday at sundown to Saturday at nightfall. In Jewish law, this day has a specific legal designation when it comes to money. Money itself is classified as muksa on Shabbat. That is a Hebrew term from the Talmud meaning separated or set aside. On Shabbat, money is not merely inconvenient to handle. It is spiritually classified as belonging to a different category of existence entirely. The Talmud in Tractate Shabbat and the Shulchan Aruch, the great code of Jewish law compiled by Rabbi Yosef Karo in the 16th century, are both absolutely clear. Commerce is forbidden on Shabbat. Financial transactions are forbidden on Shabbat. And critically, even discussing business matters, reviewing accounts, calculating debts, all of it is considered a violation of the spirit of the day. The Sanhedrin, the ancient high court of Jewish law, legislated this not as an arbitrary restriction, but as a precise spiritual technology, because they understood something. They understood that the mind that is saturated in financial anxiety, in debt consciousness, in the weight of what is owed and what is lacking, cannot access the state of clarity and trust that is required to make wise financial decisions. And more than that, they understood that the energy you carry into your relationship with money on any given day shapes your entire week's financial reality. Shabbat was designed to be a complete break, a full reset, a 25-hour period in which the Jewish family steps entirely out of the world of commerce and into a world of abundance consciousness. Not pretend abundance, real abundance. The Talmud in Tractate Shabbat teaches that on Shabbat, a person's income for the entire year has already been determined by the divine. There is nothing you can do on Shabbat to earn more or lose more. The decree is already written. So the anxiety is not only useless on that day, it is spiritually corrosive, because it says, I do not trust that my portion is secure. And that lack of trust, according to the Kabbalah, is precisely what creates the energetic condition for scarcity. Now I want you to sit with something uncomfortable for a moment, because I have spoken to thousands of people over the past 4 decades, and when I describe this pattern, almost every single person recognizes themselves in it. Saturday comes. Maybe you do not observe Shabbat. Maybe Saturday is your day off work. And because it is quiet, because the noise of the week has momentarily stopped, your mind finally has space to think about money. So you sit down with your bills. You open your bank app. You scroll through what you owe. You calculate. You stress. You argue with your spouse about the credit card balance. You lie in bed that night with the numbers running through your head. And you wonder why, no matter how hard you try, no matter how many weekends you sacrifice to worry, the financial situation never seems to improve. Here is what is happening beneath the surface. Saturday is the day your nervous system is most primed for rest and restoration. When you force it into financial stress on that day, you are hijacking the one biological reset your body and mind receive each week. The cortisol that floods your system on a stressed Saturday, the stress hormone, does not clear by Monday morning. Studies from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem on stress and decision-making have shown that financial decisions made from a state of chronic stress are consistently worse than decisions made after genuine rest. You are not being productive when you review your bills on Saturday. You are poisoning your own well. The ancient rabbis saw this pattern 3,000 years ago. They did not have the language of cortisol and neuroscience, but they had something more powerful. They had centuries of observation. And what they observed, generation after generation, was that the families who completely separated themselves from financial worry one day per week consistently built more wealth over time than the families who never stopped. The Talmud in Tractate Pesachim records a statement from the sages that has stayed with me my entire life. It says, "Make Shabbat like an ordinary day rather than be dependent on others." The sages debated this teaching for centuries, but the deeper reading, the one that the Kabbalists preserved, is this: if you honor Shabbat fully, you will never need to be dependent on others. Your wealth will be sufficient. Your provision will be secure, because you have aligned yourself with the spiritual law that governs the flow of abundance. Now I want to be specific, because I have watched people apply this principle incorrectly and then wonder why it is not working. Not opening your bills on Saturday is only half of the practice. The other half, the half that actually creates the wealth shift, is what you do instead. And this is the part that Jewish families have passed down privately for generations. When Shabbat ends, when 3 stars appear in the sky on Saturday night, Jewish families perform a ceremony called Havdalah. Havdalah means separation. Separation of the sacred from the ordinary, of the rest day from the work week. And at the end of the Havdalah ceremony, there is a prayer, a specific blessing. That has been recited by Jewish families for over 2,000 years. And this blessing, this precise declaration made at the exact moment the new week begins, is one of the most powerful financial affirmations ever encoded in religious tradition. The blessing says in Hebrew, "Hamavdil bein kodesh lechol chatotenu hu yimchol. The yarbe kehol v'zarchavim zarenu the kaspasienu," which means, may the one who separates sacred from ordinary forgive our sins and multiply our offspring and our wealth, like the sand and like the stars in the sky. Read those words again. At the precise moment Shabbat ends, at the exact second the new financial week begins, traditional Jewish families have been asking for their wealth to be multiplied like sand and stars. Not timidly, not with embarrassment, with complete faith and complete conviction. This is not superstition. This is intentional programming. The week ends with complete release of financial anxiety, and the week begins with a declaration of abundance. This cycle, practiced every single week without interruption, creates a relationship with money that is entirely different from the relationship most people have. Most people begin their week already behind, already anxious, already carrying the weight of what they reviewed on Saturday. Jewish families begin their week having rested completely from financial worry, and having declared out loud, "My wealth is multiplying." You cannot overstate the psychological difference between those two starting points. Here is how to apply this beginning this very week. Step 1. Identify the one day of your week that is meant to be your rest day. For traditional Jews, this is Shabbat, from Friday sundown to Saturday night. But the principle applies regardless of your faith. Choose one day, one complete day, and make a firm decision. No bills, no bank apps, no debt calculations, No financial conversations rooted in stress and anxiety. Not because you are avoiding your problems, but because you are protecting the one day your mind and spirit need to reset. Step 2. Before that rest day begins, do your financial review. On Friday afternoon, or whatever day precedes your chosen rest day, spend 30 minutes with your finances. Look at your bills. Review your bank account. Make note of what needs to be paid and when. Do it deliberately, calmly, as an act of preparation. Then close it. Physically close your laptop. Put away your bills and say out loud, "I have seen what needs to be seen. I trust that my provision is secure. I will return to this with clarity." Step 3. When your rest day ends, when your new week begins, do not open bills. Do not check your bank immediately. Instead, spend 2 minutes in what I call the Havdalah practice. Hold your hands open in front of you, palms up, and speak these words out loud. This week, abundance flows toward me from directions I do not expect. My needs are met. My wealth grows. I begin this week in trust, not in fear. Then and only then, return to your financial matters with clarity, with calm, with the mental state of someone who has genuinely rested. Here is what you will notice. Within the first 2 weeks of this practice, your financial anxiety will begin to separate from your identity. Right now, for most people, financial stress is constant. It never fully leaves. It sits in the background of every meal, every conversation, every quiet moment. When you create one genuine day of complete release each week, that stress begins to lose its grip. It is no longer permanent. It has a beginning and an end. And when stress has an ending, the mind can tolerate it. It stops becoming who you are and starts becoming something you address and then release. Within 30 days, the quality of your financial decisions will measurably improve, because you will be making those decisions from a rested mind rather than a depleted one. And the Talmud teaches in Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics of the Fathers, who is rich? He who is satisfied with his portion. This is not a teaching about settling for less. It is a teaching about the inner state from which wealth grows. Satisfaction, not anxiety, is the ground from which genuine prosperity emerges. You cannot be satisfied on a day you have spent drowning in debt papers. You cannot access gratitude when you are saturated in scarcity counting. But when you have rested, truly rested, satisfaction becomes accessible. And from satisfaction, the Kabbalah teaches, the channels of abundance open. I want to leave you with something that my mentor, Rabbi Feigenbaum, said to me many years later, near the end of his life. I visited him and I asked him, "Rabbi, in all your decades of studying wealth and Torah, what is the single most practical thing a person can do to change their financial life?" He was quiet for a long time, and then he said, "Eliyahu, stop letting money follow you into your sacred time. When you cannot put money down, even for one day, it is because money has become your master and not your servant. The Torah gives us Shabbat so that we remember. We are not our debts. We are not our bank balances. We are souls with a divine portion that was decided before we were born. When you remember that one day per week, the money begins to know its place. And money that knows its place stays and grows and multiplies. That is the hidden law. That is the teaching most rabbis give only to their closest students. And now you have it. Guard it, practice it, and watch what begins to shift in your financial life within the next 30 days. If this teaching opens something in you, subscribe to this channel now and turn on notifications. Every week I reveal ancient Jewish wisdom about money, prosperity, and the spiritual laws that govern wealth. teachings that were kept private for generations, teachings that the wealthiest Jewish families have lived by for 3,000 years. Leave a comment below and write the words, "I protect my sacred time." Make that declaration right now, because the moment you decide that one day belongs to rest and not to anxiety, your relationship with money begins to change. Share this video with one person in your life who opens their bills on weekends and wonders why the financial stress never lifts. You may change the entire trajectory of their financial life with one share. And like this video, so that this ancient wisdom can reach the people who need it most. I will close with a blessing. May you find the courage to put your bills down for one sacred day each week. May that rest become the ground from which your abundance grows. May your wealth multiply like sand and like stars. May your portion be more than sufficient, not only for you, but for your children and your children's children. You are not meant to carry financial anxiety every single day of your life. The Torah knew this 3,000 years ago, and now so do you. Shalom.